Please welcome to the stage the President of the PCC Academic Senate, Ed Martinez, and the Chancellor of the California Community College System, Chancellor Jack Scott, and former President of Pasadena City College.
Welcome. I'm Edward Martinez, President of the PCC Academic Senate. It's my pleasure to welcome all faculty, students, and staff members to this town hall event featuring our Chancellor, Dr. Jack Scott. This event is co-sponsored by the Academic Senate and the PCC Board of Trustees. I would also like to welcome community members in the audience, including Bill Bogard, Mayor of the City of Pasadena, Sandra Thomas from the Altadena Town Council, Scott Svonkin from the Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees representing the San Gabriel area, Joel Shapiro, Superintendent of South Pasadena Unified, Tanganyika Turner from the Office of Assemblymember Anthony Portantino, and Adam Carter from Senator Carol Liu's office. I just want to take a moment and remind the PCC faculty that on Monday, I sent to all of you a list of local assembly members and state senators with their phone numbers, addresses, and emails. I'm sure that in just a few minutes, Dr. Scott will provide you with abundant reasons why you need to get in touch with them and advocate for PCC and for community colleges in general. Before we hear Dr. Scott, please join me in greeting Jeff Baum, President of our Board of Trustees representing District Number 1, and a member of the Board of Governors for all California community colleges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Martinez. It's really a treat to be here today to have this opportunity to talk about the budget crisis impacting the state. And our partnership with the faculty of PCC as members of the governing board is so important to the future of this institution. And so I'm grateful for the partnership that's extended by President Martinez. And I just want to take a moment to recognize, and Mayor Bogard just arrived, and we mentioned him earlier, but I want to say hello. Say hi to Mayor Bogard. Could I ask the members of the Academic Senate to please stand and be recognized who are present with us today? Who is a member of the Academic Senate? Can you please let us have an opportunity to recognize you? Many of them are in class or coming from class. And then, is that Scott Svonkin that just got here from the LA Community College District Board of Trustees? It's great to see you, Scott. And then I want to ask my colleagues on the Pasadena City College Board of Trustees to stand and allow us to recognize the partnership that we have. I see Linda Waugh, Tony Fellow, Bill Bogard, Berlinda Brown, Jeanette Mann, and we're all working together to advocate on behalf of students and student success in Pasadena. And I also want to extend my deep appreciation to the administration, President Rocha and Juan Gutierrez, for helping organize this event on our behalf so that we have an opportunity for this dialogue. Yes. Yes, we mentioned Sandra Thomas already, Dr. Mann. So, Dr. Sandra Thomas, it's great to see you. Okay. Thank you, but that's what I love about Jeanette Mann. She's never hesitates to let you know what she's thinking, and that's why she's a great colleague on the Board of Trustees. So but really, I was in the Board of Governors meeting just a few weeks ago when Dr. Scott announced to the Board of Governors that after 3.5 years, he's chosen to retire this year, and it was at first something that I said in private and closed session, but I feel free to share this as saying, you know, you've mentioned that you failed retirement twice. Can we convince you to fail retirement one more time? And he said not this time because he pointed out that he graduated college in 1954. That's 58 years ago. He has been serving students every single day since 1954. It's a remarkable record of achievement. He was... And so you all know him from the community college system. I actually have a family connection. My mom served on the Coast Community College District Board of Trustees when the Chancellor was the head of academic affairs at Orange Coast College in Orange County. Then he became president of Cypress College. And then, as we all know, president of Pasadena City College when he announced his first retirement. And then Jeanette Mann and a few others actually convinced him to extend his public service and go in and run for political office, where he served in the state assembly for 2 terms, and then transferred to the state senate. There was no one that was a more passionate advocate and spokesperson and more effective in getting things done for the community college students than Assemblyman and Senator Jack Scott, so that when the governor looked to leadership and make policy that would impact students, that he turned to Jack Scott. And that leadership and that advocacy yielded results. And so we turned around, the Chancellor and the Senator turned around the tide of neglect for community colleges after decades into one where community colleges and community college students became the focus of our state's higher education policy making. And so then when I caught wind, I was going through the process of appointment for the Board of Governors, that they were looking to Jack Scott to be the chancellor of the system. I said, there's no way Lacreta's going to let him do it. He's given so much of himself already. And then when he agreed to do it, I realized that every day that Jack Scott and Lacreta Scott committed to serving was a gift, no matter whether it was a day, a month, a week, or pushing 4 years now. And so we've been very fortunate that Jack Scott has continued to serve students and the state and the community, and it's been a gift to him. He makes less than most community college presidents, by the way, in the state of California. It's something that he's doing out of a passion for education and a deep a sense of personal service and public service that serves as a model for so many of us, both here in our community and up and down the state. And we're so lucky because he and Lacreta have agreed, have announced that after his retirement, and we should all, that he and Lacreta are going to come back to our community and be a part of the Altadena-Pasadena community just as soon as they complete rebuilding their house, which unfortunately, as many of you heard, was lost to a terrible fire on Christmas Day. So please give a Pasadena City College Lancer welcome to the Chancellor of the California Community College System, Jack Scott.
Well, Jeff, I really thank you for that very warm introduction. And certainly to stand here in Sexson Auditorium is a moment where many memories flood through my mind, because you see, I came here in 1987 as president of Pasadena City College, and I gather there are probably students out there that weren't born at that time. My hair was a little different color at that time, but some of the richest and most wonderful years of my life were spent right here. My office, of course, as you know, was in the halls of this building. I remember a lot of wonderful things happening here. We were able to build a new library, and we were able to build several other, the parking lot and the wonderful structure over the Community Skills Center, and we set the stage for the beginning of the athletic facility, and you just kept going. And as I walked on this campus this morning, I once again was struck by how really outstanding and beautiful the campus is. It has a wonderful feel about it. And of course, it's always great to see students, and it's great to see my many friends here. I owe a lot to Pasadena. Because they not only brought me here as president, but they were kind enough to elect me, and I ran for office 4 different times, and I was fortunate to win each time. I served 2 terms in the Assembly and 2 terms in the Senate, and that was a great experience. It was my first experience in politics. Probably as most of you know, politics is kind of a contact sport. And, but I survived it just fine because I had great friends here. And I have enjoyed my role as a chancellor, but Lacreta and I do look forward to coming back here to the Pasadena area, and maybe at a little slower pace than I've been accustomed to in my life, but still being a part of this great community. Now, you've asked me here to talk a little bit about the present state of California's budget and what we might call a state of the state. I could say there's both good news and bad news. The good news for California community colleges is simply that I've never known community colleges to be more popular than they are today, not only in California but throughout the nation. People are recognizing the value. Even President Obama frequently states the value of community colleges. He recently presented his budget at Northern Virginia Community College. We're being inundated with students who want to come here, who want their first 2 years, or those who are out of work who know that our career technical programs are so great. In fact, I recently read that these middle skill jobs, the jobs that our career technical programs here at PCC, jobs like auto servicing, nursing, radiological technology, etc., that those jobs between 2008 and 2018 are going to grow by 19%. So you're doing something for the economy of the state of California. Unfortunately, the state of California has not fully recognized and appreciated what higher education is doing. And I think it's a tragedy that's happening in our state as slowly the resources are being taken away from community colleges, from K through 12 education, from the University of California, from California State University. We will pay a very high price in the future for those thousands of students who can't come in to our institution simply because there's not enough room. I'm going to have to tell you these rather frank bad news. I'm thinking a little bit about the story of the older man who began to lose his hearing, and finally he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you know, Ben, you're a little bit prone to drink too much whiskey, and I suggest that you cut down on your consumption. Well, he came back 6 months later. His hearing was even worse. And the doctor began to berate him, and finally he said, you know, doctor, I thought about it for a while, and he said, frankly, I liked what I was drinking better than what I was hearing. So I'm going to have to tell you some things about the state of the finances in California that are not good news. I've told you the good news, and now we'll come out with the straight news. What caused the drop in the revenues of the state of California? Well, it goes way back to even 1978 when Prop 13 was passed, and suddenly the property taxes in California were placed under a very strict kind of cap, and so they didn't grow at the rate that they did before. And so California began to depend more upon income tax. Well, the problem with income tax is it's very volatile. It goes up and down, and so in the early 90s, times were good. There was a tech revolution, and so the revenues went up, but suddenly the bottom dropped out. And let me just tell you when it dropped out. In 2007-8, California was collecting $99.2 billion in revenue. The very next year, it dropped to $82.8 billion in revenue, or a 16.5% drop. Well, that, of course, hurt us very much. And you might say, well, why couldn't we solve that problem? Well, we have some structural problems in California that make it difficult to solve. For one, we can't raise taxes unless we get a 2/3 vote. Now, I was in the legislature, and I saw how hard it was to get a 2/3 vote because there's one party, for instance, who's made a pledge, we're not going to raise taxes. Well, when suddenly you're running a revenue shortfall of that magnitude and you can't raise taxes, there's only one other thing to do, and that's to cut. Begin to reduce the expenditures. Furthermore, there were other parts of the state budget that were growing, and sometimes it was hard to stop them. For instance, corrections. Corrections now takes 10% of the state budget. That's more than we spend on the University of California and California State University combined. Sometimes I think we're more interested in prison stripes than in graduation gowns. And one of the reasons for that, frankly, is that in our zeal to put more prisoners behind bars, we voted for 3 strikes and you're out. Well, folks, when you put somebody away for a long time, it costs lots of money. Take $40,000 a year for every prisoner that's incarcerated, and say he stays in there for 25 years. And I say he because by far the large majority of our prisoners are male. That's $1 million. And so we have some parts of our budget that were growing, and what happened was education, with the drop in revenue and with the growth of other expenditures, began to be pushed out. Let me tell you what happened to community colleges in that period of time. In 2009-10, we took an 8.7% cut, which is $549 million. This year, we took an additional 7.6% cut, which is about 16%, and then we found out that our fees are not running as high as we thought they would. That's the tuition we pay, because so many of our students now are on Board of Governors waiver. And then also, the property tax weren't as high. So we're doing the best we can to present our plight. And I met, for instance, with the director of Finance, Ana Manasantos, and I met with the governor's aides to say, we need help. We're in desperate situations. But that's what's been happening to us. So a lot of times, if you think that what's happened at Pasadena City College is isolated, it's not at all. It's happening all up and down the state. I visit college campuses constantly. I was in Long Beach yesterday, and I was visiting with the presidents of Northern California last weekend, and the tale of woe is the same. That is, community colleges are experiencing great difficulty. Well, how do they cope with that? Well, there's a variety of ways to cope with it. You know, you can try to make some cut in maybe even things like maintenance, or you can't cut utilities much. But the reality is that our biggest expenses is personnel. We're a people's business, and it's 85% of most community college budgets has to do with paying personnel. That's as it should be, because it's the teachers, it's the classified staff, it's the administrators, it's the whole college staff that makes a difference in the lives of students. And so most colleges have begun to contract the number of courses that they offer. Why do they do that? Well, there's 2 reasons. One is, of course, it lowers expenses. And secondly, the state, when they lowered the amount of money that we received, they also lowered the cap on each community college. Let me just illustrate that. Let's just throw out a college. Let's say that you were generating 10,000 full-time equivalents, FTES we call that. Well, if you cut that by 10%, they're saying, well, now we'll only pay you for 9,000. And if you educate students beyond that, we just don't give you any remuneration. Well, that puts the college in a very bad bind. It isn't that a college really wants to educate fewer students. Every college I know of would like to educate more students. That's what we're in the business, and we're thrilled when people are coming to our doors wanting education. But if you offer fewer classes, then inevitably there are people that are turned away. I was particularly disturbed to learn that in the first year that we took that cut, that we lost 133,000 first-time students. How did that happen? Well, in most cases, they were the last in line to register. And so they come in, they're admitted, but there are no classes. They want that basic English or that basic math or that chemistry course or that history course, and it's full. In fact, our classes have increased in size. We went from an average of 29 to 31 in that 2-year period. Now, maybe that doesn't sound like much, but that's about a 5 or 6% increase in the size of classes. And you know, we've got some classes that, frankly, we can't have 31 in. If you have a machine shop class in which you've got only 18 stations, that's all you can take. And so there are other classes, of course, that have 40 and 50 in them. So we have been struggling. A lot of colleges have felt like that maybe the one area where they could reduce a little was in avocational courses, those courses that maybe aren't transfer in nature, or aren't career technical in nature, or aren't basic skills in nature. What do I mean? Well, maybe a class like aerobics for seniors or something like that, that is a good course, but maybe isn't quite as essential as those students who are desperate to transfer or are desperate for vocational courses. They want to get a job, and of course, as you know, California has the second highest unemployment rate in the nation. We're trying to do some things at the state level. We can't generate money. I make as strong a plea as I can, and I really appreciate the fact that the president of the Academic Senate has just said to you, make your statement to your legislators. Call on them to give you more money. It certainly doesn't hurt to make as much noise as you can. I don't mean belligerent. I don't mean occupying the office, but go in and say how hurtful it is for classes to be cut out. And maybe a student who can go there and say, you know, I wanted to transfer, but I can't transfer. We're working on issues. When I was in the Chancellor's office, there's a lot of things I worked on, constantly advocating for community colleges, but back 2 years ago in 2010, we were able to come up with a bill, Senate Bill 1440, which made it easier to transfer to California State University. They worked with us, and we're going to have a transfer degree in every community college that's only 60 units, that has the same kind of general education that CSU has, and CSU has said, we will in turn, when you transfer, we'll take 60. It will take only 60 more units in order to graduate. Well, we think that'll mean that we could educate about 55,000 more community college students and also about 15,000 more CSU students because of this particular action. However, you probably picked up the paper and read just recently that CSU is contemplating accepting no transfers in the spring of 2013. Now, they're not doing that out of spite. They're doing that because of that increasing, crunching reduction of resources. And so they're not sure they can serve us. They're hopeful that the tax initiative that we'll vote on in November will pass, which will give all of the colleges and all of education more money. And I'll just say a word right now. I'll be very clear that I'll be very supportive of that tax initiative because it'll mean $300 or $400 million more for community colleges. And it might mean, if it doesn't pass, another big cut for community colleges. So I understand the plight of CSU, but I can't help but say it's going to hurt our students because let's say you wanted to transfer in the spring of 2013, you may have to put it off till the fall of 2013. So those are the kind of tough choices that are being made. Another thing that we're doing up there is we recently had a student success task force, and we looked at ways by which we can improve student success in our community colleges. We're looking at things like priority enrollment for more first-year students, and maybe looking at those who are only taking avocational courses to be moved a little further back in the line because we think those first-year students are deserving of transfer and vocational courses. We want each college to look at ways in which they can improve student success. I was down at Long Beach yesterday, for instance. I'm very impressed with the kind of collaboration between Long Beach Unified School District, Long Beach City College, and Long Beach State. They've made it seamless, and they've had a growing college-going rate among their students. And so I would encourage those kinds of steps on local college campuses. So we're working to improve student success. We're doing all we can. What I've come to tell you today is maybe to just give you a bird's eye view of where we are in the state of California. Yes, I admit it's not good news. There's no way that we can print money in the state to increase the revenues. We're not like the federal government. I will do all I can and have done all I can to go up and down the halls of the Capitol. I happen to know a lot of the people there and tell them what the community colleges are doing and how important it is that we receive additional revenues. But I've got to tell you the truth, there are a lot of other groups out there that are doing the same. And I don't blame them. California State University, the University of California, CalWorks, some of our wonderful programs that have to do with health care and all the other things that the state of California support. And we're seeing just a constant dwindling of these particular programs. And so we are seeing what I would call a death by 1,000 cuts. And that's not a good way for the state of California. But I guess I would want to close by saying to you who are students, don't give up, because your education is your key to mobility. All the studies indicate that the more you're educated, the more likely you are to increase your economic outcome, the better health you'll enjoy, the less likely you are to be unemployed and on welfare. All of those benefits come to you as a result of that. Sometime when I'm speaking to a high school group, I say to them, how would you like to earn $1 million? And they generally kind of perk up when I say that. And I say that's the difference in the lifetime earnings between someone with only a high school diploma and someone with a college degree. So stay the course. I know you're frustrated. I know there are classes you want to take at times and you can't get them. But I would hope that that discouragement is not sufficient to keep you from achieving your goal, because after all, those of us who have worked in community colleges for many decades, we're here because we really believe it's this particular institution and the other institutions throughout the state that transforms lives. And we have been blessed by being a part of that great enterprise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chancellor. This is also meant to be a dialogue and an opportunity to ask questions for the Chancellor. We are taping this for those who couldn't come, so we have 2 microphones set up in the aisles and would welcome anybody who has a question for the Chancellor. We have about 25 minutes for questions and would love to hear. If you could at least identify yourself so that whether you're a student, a faculty member, a member of the community, and we'll get started. Sir, if you could go ahead.
Yes. Hi, my name is Sam Resnick. I'm a student, and I have a couple questions for Chancellor Scott about the state of the school at Pasadena City College. The first is whether or not you're aware of the funds by the administration swept into separate accounts while the administration claims that it has no more funding. For example, according to the Faculty Association's numbers, I can read this right here, $2 million last year were set aside in anticipation of the cuts, and I don't know how that money has been accounted for. There's also the $4 million swept into capital outlay, the $6.2 million swept aside for the relocation of the U building, and the 15% reserves, which are, of course, 10% above the required amount by the state of California. So I'm wondering if you're aware of all of the funds being swept into separate accounts while the administration is saying that they don't have the funding.
Well, let me first say to you that I'm not familiar, and nor did I intend to come here and talk about the situation at Pasadena City College. I don't know whether those accounts are accurate or not. I can tell you that part of the reason that there was a buildup of reserves, like a lot of colleges, were for emergencies. And I understand that some of those reserves have been used even to offer additional classes. But I'm not going to stand here today and try to make some kind of observations about a particular situation at Pasadena City College. First place, I would be speaking and not having the facts in front of me other than what you stated, and I'd have to look very carefully at that. And secondly, that's not the purpose of my coming here, was to was to talk about Pasadena City College. My purpose in coming here is to tell you what's happening in the state of California and how it has affected Pasadena City College and all the other 112 colleges in the state of California.
Next is Simon Fraser from the Associated Students.
Thank you. As I said, Simon Fraser from the Associated Students of PCC. 2 questions, and hopefully they'll be pretty easy. How does the Chancellor's Office plan to help balance the needs that the Student Success Task Force had, not only with providing, what the colleges need to do as far as pathways, increased enrollment, and also getting the resources to the community colleges to help with things like the interventions, the extra counseling requirements, educational plans. And secondly, Santa Monica City College has recently developed its at-cost plan, which I know is also related to AB 515. And how does that look as far as a trend going with adding these extra sections for at-cost education?
Well, that's a very good question that has to do with Santa Monica College, and I will simply say to you that the Chancellor's Office has previously indicated to colleges that we believe that that step would be illegal. There was an attempt to change the law, which failed last year, and now Santa Monica College has chosen to go alone and to do it anyway. Frankly, we will seek an opinion from the Attorney General's office as to whether or not that is legal or not. If it's legal, they can do it. If, on the other hand, it's illegal, they cannot do it. And the particular code is a little ambiguous. Now, let me tell you about the Student Success Task Force. There are a lot of things we're calling on that won't cost any money. Priority enrollment, for instance, if the colleges change their priorities as to who gets to enroll first, that won't cost money. A student success scorecard for every college where you break down exactly how many students are getting 50 units, 15 units, 30 units, degrees, and so forth, with a breakdown in ethnicity, that won't cost money. Now, those things that might cost money, for instance, we're suggesting that every college have an orientation and every college have a common assessment. By the way, right now we could have 112 different kinds of assessment for the 112 different colleges. Frankly, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So a common assessment will not be any more expensive, be less expensive because we could buy it in bulk. Now, those things that might cost money, we will simply phase those in when resources are available. We will not require colleges to do anything and simply say you must do it. There are colleges, by the way, that furnish orientation for every student who are already doing it now, and we would encourage colleges to move in that direction because that would have a lot to do with student success. But a lot of the things that we've suggested in the Student Success Task Force are only recommendations, and it's up to the college to follow these best practices.
Thank you.
Scott?
Thank you so much. Chancellor, as you probably know, you and Pasadena City College turned my life around, and so I owe you a great debt of gratitude. For those of you who don't know, I was a high school dropout, and when Jeanette Mann and John Martin were early in their career as trustees, Pasadena City College turned my life around. So I wanted to thank you for your service and your career. I was that one student on the committee that hired you, so I take credit for that.
You were a student body president.
Trustee and vice president.
Oh, trustee, excuse me.
But I want to ask you for advice. We're facing mid-year cuts, and we're all struggling with the fact that revenue is down on property tax revenue and enrollment in the fee revenue is down. And so we're facing mid-year cuts that are going to hurt each and every one of us. LA Community College District sounds like Pasadena City College. We set money aside to deal with those cuts. So we're going to take money out of our reserves and deplete our reserves some. But what are the chances and what do you recommend all of us who love community college, for those of us that owe community colleges their future, their lifestyle, which I do, what can we do with your help and together to try to talk to the governor and convince the governor not to make the mid-year cuts and to supplement, I believe,
$149 million.
Yeah, yes. $149 million this year. And so your advice would be helpful. And what can we do together and what can we do in each of our communities to address the potential damage it's going to do to our colleges, our faculty, and our students?
Well, the first thing you ought to do is go to your legislators, like in Los Angeles, and make sure they're aware of this. I'm doing all I can. As I said, I've met with a lot of legislators to tell them this story, and I met with the director of finance, and I met with the governor's aides. And so I'm doing all I can to highlight this and how difficult this is going to be. And I sensed we were getting a pretty good reception. They understood that it's tough to suddenly make mid-year cuts, and but they're going to be in the same kind of condition. You know, there's going to be 100 other claims made on their time and so forth. So go to legislators. And by the way, when a legislator says to you, oh, I love the community colleges and so forth, ask him or her how they voted on increasing taxes, because you can't spin rhetoric. I haven't found it very helpful just because somebody loves me to say, oh, well, that's great. How about some money? And so I'm saying get down to the bare tax. Now, don't get belligerent or harsh or you know, try to occupy his or her office, but do go in and make your case. And I would suggest a good, say, 4 or 5 people, a trustee, a student, a faculty member, all of those people could really make a case in front of the legislature. I was a legislator for 12 years. I paid attention to people who came into my office and I didn't always agree with everything they said, but I listened to them. And a phone call helps, but a personal appearance is the best thing. And that is a personal appearance that's well-timed, not with 20 people, because that's overwhelming. Just 4 or 5 key people going in and talking to the legislator and to any other person that will listen, any of the state officials, and let them know how that's impacting Pasadena City College, or how that's impacting Los Angeles Harbor College, or how that's impacting Citrus College, and make that case and say, you know, we're having to turn our backs on people who want education, and that's a tragedy.
We're also fortunate to have representatives of our legislative offices here who've been tremendous advocates for community colleges. I saw Tanganyika from Assemblyman Portantino's office, and who's here from Senator Liu's office? And Adam's here from Senator Liu's office. They have been terrific advocates for the Pasadena City College and community colleges. But Pasadena City College draws students from all over the region, from all parts of LA County. And I know that if you live in Mike Gatto's district, or Tim Donnelly's district, or others, that message needs to get across to them as well. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Natalie Loera. I'm a student here at PCC. I've been hearing rumors that they're actually going to extend semesters. I don't know if that's true or not, but what kind of impact do you think that would have? And do you actually find quarter semesters to be more efficient?
To go from semester to quarters? I would hesitate to do that, and you know that's a decision to be made by individual colleges, but there are very few colleges that are on the quarter system, so it would kind of hurt you in terms of your transfer. And I know UCLA is on the quarter system, but most CSUs are not on the quarter system, and a lot of UCs are not on the quarter system. So I would just simply say that I don't immediately see how that would solve our problems financially. I don't know for sure what Pasadena City College does in terms of its intersessions and summer schools and so forth. Summer schools have been badly hurt because often what happens is colleges have simply cut back or even eliminated their summer schools because they've already reached their cap. And so when they reach their cap and then they educate students in the summer school, they don't get paid for that. All they have is expenses. So right now I wouldn't suggest that as a great solution. Frankly, if I knew of a quick solution, I would suggest it.
Yes, ma'am.
It's really has to do with the lack of money. That's the key. Yes.
Hi, I'm Janelle Bruno. I'm a student here at PCC, but I also have two students in the Cal State system. And I want to know what you have thought, or what the community colleges have thought about what's going to be the ripple effect from the cuts on the Cal State system and on the UC system.
Well, they're going to suffer. Take, for instance, UC. UC is the great engine of research in this state. I can tell you that a lot of those wonderful things that happen in Silicon Valley and in other places had a lot to do with higher education. Anytime you cut the resources down, and a lot of colleges are doing everything they can to save money, but you're going to hurt the economy of the state of California in the long run. Cal State, they can't admit as many students. You know, it's sad to think that we are looking at a group of students who are thirsty for higher education, all of which would enrich their life and enrich the economy of California, and because of a lack of state resources, we're having to limit it. So it's hard to measure the long-term effect. What does it mean to somebody who tries to enroll in Cal State LA, and then the circumstances of life change? Maybe that person has a chronic illness or some other thing happens, and they never get to go to college. That is a real deprivation. So I can just simply say that even though my role is as Chancellor of the California Community Colleges, and that's for whom I speak, I am just as distressed over what's happening at California State University and the University of California.
Next.
Tim Dvorak, I'm a student here at PCC. A little nervous. Thank you so much, Mr. Scott, for being here. Chancellor Scott.
Sure.
I do have a question. Recently, or at least 2 years ago, I was in a management position, and they asked me to cut my pay to help the business, which I did. I cut my pay to help the business, and I went back up to my regular pay. I'm wondering why we're making cuts all over, and this goes into the political realm as well as here's the Board of Trustees and our presidents that are getting pay raises as the rest of us are suffering. And how do you view on that, which is kind of an injustice to us under people that are here at the school?
Well, number one, I can't tell you what, you know, I made it very clear that it's not my job to solve whatever problems exist at Pasadena City College. If I were the president here, I'd try to address those problems, but I'm not the president here. But let me tell you this. The faculty and staff have probably gone quite a long period of time without much in the way of raises. So, and by the way, most of the things that are done by the faculty and staff are done through collective bargaining. So that's just not something that somebody can decree and say, beginning next year, we'll have a 10% cut in faculty salaries and staff salaries and so forth. So I don't know that I can address that. That's something that should be discussed. But I can guarantee you that you don't have as many faculty members here or as many administrators here or as many staff people here as you had 3 years ago. And that's not because they don't want to serve the people. It's because they have no way to fund new positions. And so you have a lot of people retiring, a lot of people resigning, and they're not replaced. So I don't have the figures, and I don't, but I can imagine that Pasadena City College is like all the other colleges up and down the state, and I have looked at the overall figures, and the number of administrators, the number of full-time faculty, the number of classified staff in nearly all the colleges have decreased, and therefore the payroll as a whole has decreased.
I'll just point out there's been no raises for Board of Trustee members as well.
Is that also for the presidents?
Yes, no, there was no.
There was no raises for any of the presidents.
So next, ma'am.
Hi, Dr. Scott. Bianca Richards.
I remember you well, Bianca.
Nice to see you. I just have a question. Do you think in the discussions with anything up at the Chancellor's office, is there a discussion like the philosophical idea of the community colleges and the open access maybe changing a little bit, or what is the future of that whole, the foundation of the community colleges? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think we're going to change open access. That's the jewel of this system. And that says that if you're a high school graduate regardless of what your grades were like in high school, you were able to come to Pasadena City College. I sometimes say University of California takes the top 12.5%, CSU takes the top 33.33%, we take the top 100%. So we're going to still do that. Now, are we going to suggest that some of our avocational courses, which grew up, the original purpose of the community colleges was academic and vocational. And in time, we began to add some things in lifelong learning. They were good things. We had classes in quilting, and we had classes in, aerobics for seniors and things like that. Those are things that I think we'll offer. We are offering less and less because that's not our primary mission. And sometimes I get angry adults of my age who say, oh, I love that class, I just want to go to that. I say, do you want to take a seat and not allow the first-year student who's desperate to transfer, or the person who's out of work, who's looking to go to some of our career technical programs? Are we going to say that those are individuals that we're going to crowd out to allow you to have that class? And you see my point. But I don't think we're going to cut back on open access. Student Success Task Force simply says we ought to be more successful once you get in. It has nothing to do with cutting the access.
Yes, sir. Hi, my name is Antonio Flores, and I'm a student here at PCC. I saw on ABC 7 that I guess you're giving raises to administrators, but yet you're cutting funding for schools. How's that possible?
Who is that?
Oh, ABC 7 had a news article on TV that says that you're giving administrators raises while at the same time you're cutting funding for schools. How's that possible?
I didn't give anybody raises. I haven't gotten a raise in the 3.5 years I've been there, and nobody in my office has gotten a raise. So I don't know who it was. And, I'm not going to get into this game of saying, well, they hired somebody over at Long Beach City College, and they're paying him or her X, Y, or Z, and they ought to be paying them 10% less or something. That's a decision to be made by Long Beach City College trustees. But I can tell you, we've had no raises at the state level. In fact, when I first got there, after about a year, we started taking furloughs, and we just quit that recently. So in the time I've been there, my salary's gone down rather than up because we took furloughs. So, and our staff is smaller. So I don't know, I can't second guess other places, but I can tell you what's happened in my office.
You might have seen some coverage about the Cal State system had some coverage about executive compensation, but in the community college system, it's exactly as Chancellor Scott pointed out. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca, and I'm a student here at PCC. I just wanted to know, as a student, how can we sort of remind people in government the frustration you have as a student going through this education process, the fact that they went through it. It's sort of frustrating to think that, they're sort of aren't as motivated sometimes to push for education, especially at a community college level. The fact that community college actually, any type of education, reduces the number of people that will go into jail. I don't understand why more money would be put towards the jail systems and not towards education. By putting money towards education, you're lowering that number and therefore taking out that extra cost.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I believe that education is a prevention, and I often make that case that we're spending too much money on corrections. I was in the legislature for 12 years, and I raised some of these very questions. I remember some hesitancy on the part. One time, one legislator that I know very well introduced a bill that said we ought to review the 3 strikes and you're out as to see how effective it is. I voted for it. We couldn't get it out because some legislators were afraid if they voted for it, they would be viewed soft on crime. You know, legislators are just average people. Some of them you have great admiration for, and some of them you don't. So that's, you know, a lot of times people think that, you know, all legislators are crooks. No, legislators, number one, they're elected by the people, so the people generally deserve what they get. and number two, they're average people, and they sometimes are very courageous, and sometimes they're not very courageous. So that's the way the ball bounces, as they say. Go right ahead.
This may be the last question.
Hi, my name is Daniela Rueda. I'm actually with associated students as well. My question, well, first of all, Chancellor, thank you for coming to PCC. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone for you taking your time to come and answer our questions and give us a little bit more information. My question is, based on your experience, not only in the educational aspect, but also in the political realm, what do you think the prognosis would be for the proposed tax increase in November? And how will the two different scenarios paint the picture for the California Community College system?
Very good question. I think it has a good possibility, but I don't think it's a sure thing. I think those of you, by the way, if you're registered to vote, vote. If you're not registered to vote, register. We need your vote. And if you're a community college student and you want to see more money go to the community colleges, then that tax initiative will help community colleges. It's estimated that it will give $300 to $400 million extra to community colleges. If it passes, that there will be an additional cut of $280 million if it doesn't pass. So do the arithmetic. We're looking at a swing of about $500 to $600 million difference. You know, somebody said, our taxes are too high. All people waste money. There's waste and fraud and all the other things. Taxes are the price of civilization. We may not be spending all the money as well as it should be spent, and I'll be a critic as well as anybody else. But the reality is that it does take resources to do things. It takes resources to run Pasadena City College. It takes resources to run to sweep the city streets. It takes resources to light the lamps, to build the roads. It takes resources to do that. And the idea that in some way or another we can just simply turn our back and not pay for things, it's not that way, folks. It just, and let me say just a word on behalf of public employees. I've worked with public employees. I worked here at Pasadena City College for 8 years. I was always impressed by the dedication, by the hard work, by the individuals who were here, some of whom could have received a great deal more money doing something else, but who cared deeply about students. And I'm sure that's been mostly your experience in your classrooms. Well, maybe sometime somebody isn't quite as good a teacher as you might think they ought to be, but in reality, you're here because you recognize that being a student at Pasadena City College pays off for you. You know that you're learning a lot. You're getting excited about things. And so I simply am proud to have served as a public employee now since 1973. And I don't know whether I was overpaid or underpaid, but all I know is I enjoyed those many, many years that I got to serve in my capacity. I'm proud of the fact that I could make a contribution, and I found that working with many other fellow state employees was a great, great experience. So, you know, it's tough times, and I know a lot of times, as somebody said once, you know, the manners get bad when the food gets scarce. And the food's a little scarce right now. And we just have to pull together and say, okay, it's not exactly the way we wish it were. We wish the money were more frequent, but I think this is still a wonderful institution. In fact, I'm extremely proud to be the Chancellor of California Community Colleges, the largest system of higher education in the United States with 112 colleges and 2.6 million students. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. Before you go, actually, we have a little surprise for you. President Rocha is here, and I want to turn the mic over to him because we wanted to express our appreciation for your return to Pasadena City College.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, Chancellor, well, first, you were far too modest to talk about what you've done, so many of the things that you've done for the college. And one of the solutions that we were chatting about before was just plain old, good old-fashioned fundraising. And a lot of your work enabled us to put that beautiful library up there. And we want to thank you. And I know you would want, we were looking at our master facilities plan last night, and it was because of your great work that we are where we are. And I know you would want me to acknowledge our great people on the PCC Foundation. So if you would raise your hands and thank them, because they're the ones who are helping us with the solutions. And we just wanted to say thank you. There's no adequate way for us to say thank you for what you've done for Pasadena City College. You are part of our proud past. In this past month, our baseball team wore replica jerseys, the actual jersey that Jackie Robinson wore when he was a student here in 1936. So from one Jack to another Jack, we would like to present to you the replica jersey.
Thank you, everybody. Get back to class at 1 o'clock.